and I'm here interviewing author Gene Rowe, the author of this great new volume, The Greater Game. It's a science fiction novel. It's really great, and you should really read it. It's a phenomenal read. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's available in bookstores everywhere. So just if they don't have it, ask for it, right? So how you doing, Gene?
I'm fine, Rick. I'm fine.
Oh, right,
It's
right.
evening here in the UK. It's quite nice outside. It's quite nice outside.
It's
But
amazing.
here I am, sacrificing the nice weather to being here to talk to you today.
That's great. It's warm here too, by the way. It's 70 degrees.
That's a bit hot for me actually. I'm a pasty faced Englishman. I go pink whenever the weather's above about 60, I think, and the sun's out for more than 3 or 4
Right,
hours.
right. Well, you ready for your interview?
I'm very ready. You
All
you
right.
should be.
Now, first, three questions in one. Um, First, have you always wanted to be a writer? Second, what ins how long you've been writing, and what inspired you to start writing?
Yeah, they are linked, aren't they?
Yes.
How long? I think really ever since I was very young, actually, probably a teenager, in fact.
Oh my gosh.
Um, Particularly, I think around the time I was doing my degree, so 18, 19, 20, I was very keen then. And in fact, after I finished my degree, I thought it's really what I want to do. And I kind of there was a Gene kind of phase one where I spent some time
Right.
writing a variety of short stories, and this was in the age without computers really. So I would write them out longhand, and then I'd send them to a typist to type up, and
That
I wrote. Yeah, and then I would post them off to, and there wasn't a great outlet, particularly in the UK, for these type of short stories.
right,
Yeah, Interzone, and a couple of other magazines, and
right,
of course because of the absence of the internet, really, um, it was very difficult to kind of pin down where you could send these things off.
right.
So there was quite a small market, really, particularly for someone like me. And so sort of phase one lasted about a year, I think, when I churned out half a dozen stories, um, and of course didn't get anywhere. Um, and then actually, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after university. I wanted to write. I wanted to write science fiction.
Right.
Um, and I fell into a kind of research assistant job, and that led ultimately me doing a PhD. And so I came to writing from a different angle.
Right.
So I'm an academic. I'm a psychologist. Don't be concerned. I'm not that kind of psychologist.
Yep.
I'm what's known as a cognitive psychologist, and my interest is in um, memory and judgment and how people make decisions and issues to do with that. So I did a PhD, and I ended up coming at writing from that angle. So I've written many papers and many book chapters, and I've co-authored one academic book, over 100 articles and
Oh
book
my
chapters.
goodness.
So I've had the practice. So I got my practice in a different genre, almost a different area,
It is actually.
and we can talk maybe later on about how that's helped me or hindered me in terms of writing fiction.
That's a
Um,
good question.
More than happy. I've got some thoughts on that.
Yes.
And probably it was about 10 years ago, maybe I started thinking again about, well, I became a self-employed consultant, so I didn't have to go into the office, and I had much more time on my hands. And from there, I decided, to step up the writing and try and write something longer. Um, and that's kind of where it started. So that was kind of phase two. And there was about a 25 year gap between phase one and phase two.
Right.
But I hadn't wasted that time. Um, Now, how does that relate? Sorry, what were you had linked questions as
What
well, Rick.
inspired you to start writing?
Sorry,
What did you read something that inspired you to start
I,
writing,
I
or
think I
was
think
it
I was one of those kind of
particular author?
I think I was just one of those introverted children.
Right.
So as a child, I suppose, whereas other children were out kicking footballs around or riding their bicycles, I'd be inside reading. and I came to science fiction, I think, when I was about probably 10, 11, 12. I think the first science fiction author I ever read was Isaac Asimov.
Oh, really?
Yes, and in fact, I think the first book might have been Caves of Steel. And that was it. So I then became very enthused by the whole genre, and I've read hundreds. I've got my attic is still full of them. My wife wants me to get rid of them, but I'm not going to get rid of them. They're there. One day I'll have a big house, and I'll have lots of shelf space, and they will all come out. And I guess really it's just a case of, that was what interested me. So that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I couldn't think of anything else I'd want to do. Even doing the PhD, I wasn't that interested really. I didn't really want to do a PhD. I had my arm twisted in the end when my supervisor at the time said, well, look, Gene, you've already published a couple of papers on this subject.
Right.
So we can effectively backdate the start of your PhD by a year, and you already got a lot of material for it. So I said, well, okay, I'll do that. And then I got stuck in academia for another 20, 25 years, 30 years, and I'm still there, really. Albeit I'm a consultant now, so I don't have to go into the office, and I do whatever work I want to do when I want to do it. So that was my kind of background, my basis.
The Greater Game is really a phenomenal book. I've got to congratulate you on it. I mean, I really like it. I genuinely like it. Now, how did you do research for your book?
For that book, I think that I had a broad idea of what I wanted, a general plot that I wanted to follow, and I thought, well, that would be a neat story. And I'm now working on kind of my third. I'm just about to finish off my third novel. That's my first. The second, I'm still tinkering with. It's huge, and I've kind of sat on that. The third one I'm doing, just about to finish, probably within the next month or so. And in each case, I have a general idea for a plot line, a general idea, and then it's a case of really they're generally ideas about which I already have some information, some knowledge. So I've got a basis of information, and then what I would do generally is I just start. You just got to start. Sometimes you just need to start, and then for every chapter I'll have a general idea. Well, what do I want to do with this chapter? And thank goodness for the internet, really. I mean, if you talk about doing research, I give you one answer. It's the internet. Really? So I will start writing, and something I've always done is I have separate folders. And whenever I see an interesting news story about something, nanotechnology or the possibility of going to Mars or living on Mars or terraforming or anything like that, I will bookmark it and I will save it. So I have these folders already with lots and lots of files of information on things that interest me. And then once I start off a chapter, I will think, well, I've got to go from here to here. And that will involve these certain elements. And if I need to do something about Mars or about spaceships or about the makeup of the United Nations or the structure of the KGB or something like that, then the internet solves all my problems. I will just do some searches into Wikipedia, and suddenly I'll have a dozen different tabs open with information from Wikipedia on this, on that, on the other, and I'll follow links.
You save all these in folders, right?
I save all these in folders. Oh my goodness. And actually, again, I mentioned earlier about the fact that, I'm an academic and I do a lot of research anyway. And that's helped me in terms of researching for the fiction as well. Because I know how to do it. My whole career for 30 years as being an academic involves
that's really interesting.
Having a topic. And then you find all the information, and there are certain databases in academia that you go to, Web of Science and Google Scholar, for example, and online journals, and so I just have a familiarity and an experience with using appropriate search terms, finding information, looking at information, that doesn't tell me anything. That doesn't tell me anything. Scanning things very quickly. That has something interesting. I'll keep that one.
Right.
That's interesting. I'll keep that. I'll get rid of that. That doesn't say anything new. I've already read about that. And it's just part of my discipline as an academic. So when I come to research the story, I don't research too much to begin with. I have the general idea. And then it's as I push on into the story, chapter 1, and I think, well, I need some information on this that I don't know about. That's when I start to do my searches. And then chapter 2, I'll start searching something else and so on. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, yes. And I wish the authors that we publish at Whitecap Publications can see this interview. I'm going to post it up because every one of the authors researches, but your approach to research is unique. And your discipline can lend itself to everyone, right?
Yes, yes.
They just got to start.
As I say, yeah, it's writing academic papers, writing non-fiction. I think that's helped me in a couple of ways. Firstly, the research discipline.
Right.
Secondly, the fact that I know I can technically write well.
Right.
Otherwise, I couldn't publish. And I'm told by others that I write well. I used to do some work from a famous medical sociologist from London, and she would hire me to actually write her papers for her because she said to me once, she said, you know what, Gene, your first drafts are better than my final draft, and she was right actually. So there's that, but also I think the most important thing I've got from academia and writing academic articles is that I think my stories are quite complex and multifaceted and lots of jigsaw pieces.
Right.
That I fit together. And I think you'll see that in Greater Game.
If the Greater Game is any indication of how you write, it's phenomenal.
Really,
it fits together like a jigsaw puzzle, right?
Exactly. And I think my second book, which is huge, it's about 850 words, which is why I haven't sent it to you yet, Rick.
Wait, 850 words?
I'm not ignoring you. It's just I'm tweaking it. It's 850 pages. It's huge.
I'm excited.
But again, it's even more complicated. And the one I'm doing at the present, which is going to be a smaller one, probably only about 360 pages, is possibly even more complicated, even though it's shorter. So there are even more jigsaw pieces. And I think that from my academic experience, I think I can plot as well as anybody. I don't want to sound arrogant.
You plot better than anybody.
I just, I can in my head hold lots of pieces of information and kind of manipulate them and slot them together and bring in different streams, so I can have different streams going off here. And all the time I'm thinking about how and when I might be able to bring them back together again. And I think I do that quite well in Greater Game. I think I do even better in the two things that are sitting on my hard drive at the moment.
That must be the tools of your trade, right? Your folders, your academic background, and your mind.
Absolutely. Now, of course, writing academic work, writing nonfiction, of course, it doesn't solve all the solutions. I mean, I've read, there are some quite famous science fiction writers who were also academics, and sometimes you can kind of see where academia does not necessarily help you in terms of being a fiction writer. And I'm thinking largely in terms of, for example, characterization. Now, you don't do characterization in non-fiction pieces of work.
Most academic writers are very dry, but yours isn't. Yours is alive.
Yes. Again, possibly that's because I am a psychologist, actually. So my interest and my experience is in people and in talking to people.
Right.
And a lot of the things I do are kind of interviews and focus groups and things like that. And I run these kind of things. So that requires a certain amount of reading people. I mean, not in the way of a psychiatrist. I couldn't tell you anything. I don't know anything about Jung. I don't know anything about Freud. You would not come to me for any therapy. I wouldn't know what to do or how to give it. But it's really just a case that my academic discipline per se is towards the social sciences rather than the hard sciences.
That
So
brings up an interesting question, right? When you're writing an emotionally draining scene, angry scene, sexy or sad scene, or something that's really on the edge, how do you get in the mood?
I don't. I don't. No, no. Actually, I think that's a very good question. The point is, I don't psych myself up. I
Right,
don't come at the scene and I think, right, I'm going to get angry now. I want to write an angry scene. I'm going to psych myself up and make myself angry.
right.
What I do is, when I start writing the scene, um, I become angry through the process of writing the scene. I have
Right.
people saying angry things or doing angry things, and that then makes me angry. So it's kind of a cause and effect thing. Does that make sense? So
Yes, it
actually, the
does.
writing process, and I thought about this quite a bit actually, and I think, well, actually, that's a good way for it to be, because it means that the thing I'm writing is actually influencing me, and it's actually having the
Right.
effect on me that I wanted to have.
And the effect on
So
you
hopefully,
first, right? You're the
yes,
first, yeah, you're the first reader.
exactly. So hopefully, if it does it to me, if it makes me sad, if it makes me angry, it makes me laugh,
Right,
then readers will be just like me. They will come at it and they will read it and they will be neutral and blank as I was at the start. And
right,
then through reading it, they will become angry or happy or sad. Um,
right.
so that's the answer really. I, I don't bring the emotion into the piece.
You
In
don't bring the
writing
emotion
it,
into the read, it comes
comes
natural,
out
organically.
exactly.
All right. Do you ever have writer's block? And if so, how do you handle it?
Yeah. I think I'm reasonably lucky in that sense. Um, I don't suffer particularly badly.
Right?
I think I have mental diarrhea. Um, I, I I can't stop my stop things going off in
Yep.
my head
Yep.
at all, and possibly I should sometimes. But it might lead to me writing some ludicrous things, for example, in a first draft. But
Well,
it
it's
does
always
it does
easier to
happen.
trim that, isn't it? Isn't it easier to trim that out as opposed to create new things?
It is. I think you're absolutely right. It's easier to get it down and then you can cut it. But if
Right,
you
right.
can't produce it in the first place, you're stuck. Now, I do suffer kind of mini writer's block. Usually, the issue I have is when I start a new chapter. Um, when I start a new chapter, I'll have a vague idea of what's going to happen. I've got to go from A to B.
Right,
I've got to get this character from here to here. I know I'm going to have these two characters interact, and I know
right.
I want something to emerge from it, but I won't necessarily know at the start of the chapter when I sit down because I don't plan precisely. I have a general timeline, a general plot line,
That's
and
fascinating.
then I create it there. But it usually means that when I start a new chapter, um, there's a bit of kind of a kicking the cat, as it were. I stomp about and I'm
Yep.
not quite sure what I'm going to do. And usually when I start the first day on a new chapter, if I write a page and a half, I'm happy. If I write a page and a half and I've got
Really?
a scene two idea sketched out, scene three idea sketched out, scene
Right.
four idea sketched out, then I'm ecstatic. And once I've got that, then it's the floodgates open and I have no problem. So I
Now,
have lots of episodes of minor writer's block, but fortunately at present, I've not really had any of these significant ones where I've spent
right,
a
the
month
giant
going,
writers.
oh, I can't think of what to do. I can't think
Yep.
of what to write,
Yep.
and real despair and angst. I'm fortunately at present touch wood, cross fingers, and so
Cross
on.
fingers, right?
I'm okay.
What
Um,
comes first for you, the plot or the characters?
the plot,
The
the
plot.
plot, absolutely.
That's
But
interesting to say
again,
that.
it's not. Again, it's a fuzzy plot. And in fact, the,
Ah,
the plot itself can change and often
okay.
does change. The plot comes first, and then I think, well, what characters do I need um,
Mm,
to make the plot happen? What
right,
positive and negative characters do I need? Where is the tension?
right,
And then in writing, then once I've decided what characters I need, I develop the characters. So the general plot,
Right.
then the characters, but then it's a kind of an evolving reciprocal relationship. So I then have the characters, and I've this character and then two characters, and then they talk, and then it all gets away from me. So once I've got the
Yeah.
two characters talking, it might be they start messing with my plot. They start taking it away in a different direction. But the thing is, I'm happy for that to go. I'm happy for
Right.
it to go, because there is the one thing I can't, that really I really struggle with reading science fiction or any fiction,
Right.
is when you can see the author's got a plot and they are blasted well, they're going to push it through regardless, and then
Right.
suddenly you've got characters doing things and you think, Jim would never do that. Jim would never say that. Marie would absolutely never say that. She would never do that. Why is this happening? These two would never have this conversation.
Right.
But the authors said, well, no, I'm going for this plot. Here it is. I'm going from here to here, and I need something to happen, so I'm going to get Jim to say this,
Wow.
even though it's just not credible.
That's really a
I
telling
struggle with
observation.
that. So
I mean,
I won't have that. So what I have is I have a fuzzy plot. I know the big themes, the big issue, the big tell, the big payoff,
right.
and then I develop the characters, and then I let the characters loose in the world I've created, and
Right.
they talk and they interact and they do things according to their characteristics, which I do believe in strong characterization. I try to do strong characterization, and then they go and they twist it and they turn it, and I love that. Actually, it's almost my favorite part of the writing, because
That's your favorite part of the creative process, right?
Exactly, because it's so unexpected. It's so unexpected, and suddenly I put two characters together in a scene, and they take the plot somewhere, and I think, well, okay, let's run with this. And then I end up sort of changing the fuzzy plot, and I do generally get to the end point that I want at the I've established at the start.
Yep.
But I'll get there in a different way.
Now, is there any part of the writing process that's more difficult than others? And what's the most difficult part for you to do in writing?
It's description.
Yep.
I mean description of physical characteristics of physical things.
Oh, yes.
Because I don't find it so. I'm not a great visual spatial thinker, so I find it difficult to visualize, for example, three-dimensional. So a space station, for example.
Right.
Now, I think my descriptions are quite good in the end, but I do struggle with describing people, describing characters. I'm happy with, because I'm a social scientist, and I've got the terms and the understanding of how people talk to each other and how they behave. But the actual physical stuff. So this is why I'll never write hardcore science fiction, hard science fiction,
right?
Because I'm interested in faster than light travel as a mechanism to enable me to tell interesting social stories, political stories.
Oh,
but I'm not that interested really in how tachyons might work or do work or don't work.
I think so.
That makes sense. And kind of the physical construction of a spacecraft. So I can do that stuff. I can describe that stuff, and I think I do it reasonably well.
Right.
But it's hard for me. It's hard, but that is the thing I find hardest, and that I have to put a lot of effort into. If I can just sidetrack, the book I'm working on now, that I'm just about hopefully to finish in the next month and a half, is actually slightly different. It's a comic science fiction set in the city where I live. Now, the city where
science fiction?
It is. It's a comic science fiction set in the city where I live.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the theme is essentially fake news, but it's got aliens in, and the aliens are the ones propagating the fake news through different mechanisms.
Wow.
And the city where I live is Norwich in England, and it's a very, very old city, and it's very picturesque. It's a beautiful city, very old. We've got a Norman castle that's 1,000 years old. We've got a massive cathedral that's 1,000 years old. We've got more medieval churches than any other city north of the Alps.
A lot of history, in other words,
A
right?
huge amount of history, and in order to create this book so that it's very sensual. I've got to be careful here. Sensual or sensuous? Sensuous. Sensuous,
Yep.
not sensual. Sensuous. I have to describe, for example, the flint-faced churches
Oh,
and the architraves and so on. Uh, I don't need to necessarily describe these things in huge detail,
right.
but I do need to describe them, and that's my
Right.
least favorite part of it. I will really go, oh,
I can imagine.
I've got to do this. I've got to write a paragraph now where I produce this elegant and accurate description
You're
using
more
these
interested in how the characters interact with one another, right?
yes, characters interacting. I love that. That's my favorite part.
Yep.
Writing. I can write pages very quickly, with multiple characters as well, 3, 4,
Right.
5, 6, lots of them talking and jumping in and over speaking each other and correcting each other and disagreeing with each other. I can do that very easily, but writing description is something that I really have to work at, really
Right.
struggle at.
Now we're going to wrap up today's interview with another question for you, right? The final question, and we'll be back next week to explore your book, The Greater Game, because it's really a fascinating book. You've just got to get it. Uh, Gene, are you on social media, and can your readers interact with you?
I I I hate this question, Rick. Please take it back. I'm not at the moment.
Right,
I'm a complete. Again, it's ridiculous for someone who aspires to write science fiction.
right.
Um, but to say I'm a kind of a slight luddite in the sense of social media. I don't have a website and I don't have a social media account. I think I've got a Facebook account, but I never look at it. I'm not on Twitter, and I know, and you as my publisher will be berating me, and as soon as we get off this call, you're going to shout at me, and I know that, and I'm guilty, and I hate myself, and I will do. I promise I will do something
All right.
in the future.
Well, I've got
My kids are very.
13,000 followers on LinkedIn, so we're covering that front, right?
I've got LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn actually, but I've got about 80 followers or something like that. But they're all academics. They're all academics, you see. So
Oh. Well,
I don't use LinkedIn either. Really, I'm just on it.
we'll have a talk with this, Gene. So,
I'm sorry.
all right.
I'm sorry.
All right. This concludes today's interview with Dr. Gene Rowe. His book is The Greater Game, and it's a really, truly a fascinating work, right? Gene, I'll see you later. And I think I wish you a good day, right?